Login accepted.
Cool. Welcome. And my name is Alberto Brandolini. Well, you already know it because you read it on the stuff. And I'm going to talk about what happened to the EventStorming idea in this, well, actually 10 years from the, and a little more from the original idea. So the original talk was actually 50,000 stickers later, then it becomes 60, then 70, then 100, and now we are, 1 million sticky notes later. Well, because people have been using it. What I do is, I actually still don't know exactly what I do. Just like, I like to call it strategic consulting. We're helping companies with understanding architecture, but also understanding their problems if they have little to do with architecture and so on. But I like modeling stuff. I like understanding the nature of things, and I like solving problems. And when I was a young developer, I had little problems. Then you grow up, and the problems getting bigger, and then you need more space. The original idea, the original moment that made the idea of EventStorming visible to the world is actually now, is November 2013. And actually, Krakow had a little space on this because it was during that year IDDD tour with Von Vernon that I spent a couple of sessions, one in Krakow, one in Leuven, with an audience of DDD practitioners. We started experimenting with EventStorming. It was not even called EventStorming at that time. And it was kind of promising, so we kept working on this. So that was 2013, first idea. And the initial blog post, I mean, it's still accessible. I wouldn't use this as a first source of information, was actually intended to provide a nice way to discover aggregates that at that time, 2013, were the most mysterious part of domain-driven design. But this was 10 years ago. Let's move forward. 6 years later, it was a worldwide community, many practitioners, many ideas, many different recipes. I ended up playing with the format a little more, and what was one single format became a combination of more. Well, 3 main recipes. One was called Big Picture, the one that you use for kickstarting a project or exploring a very large landscape. And then closer to design, we had the process modeling, where we had the more refined structure, and the software design, which was, still dealing with the problem of finding the perfect software structure given the business problem that we played with. And we use it for many things. We use it for corporate retrospective. We use it for kicking off startups. We use it for redesigning business model. We use it to kickstart new architecture. It was actually really cool. Then, of course, you know what is going to happen in the next slide. We had this big bastard fucking the entire planet for, 1 year and more. And when it comes to EventStorming and our problem, sentences like put all the key people in the same room, if you go back 4 years, that was illegal. And then, you could put people in the same room, but with a mask. And from our perspective, given what we were doing, big workshop, organizing events, consulting, and all of this stuff, all of our business model was basically becoming illegal. I mean, drug dealers had a better moment than we had. And we had to reinvent the workshop. And that was not so easy to swallow. I mean, just 1 year before, I was tweeting, like, what is the best way to run a remote EventStorming? And I was answering, like, buy a plane ticket. Well, life told me something different. So I had to, swallow, reinvent stuff. And let's pimp up my Miro license. Let's try to understand how we could play with this. And now we're in 2024. A few things have happened. The best good news is just like we are not in lockdown anymore, and humanity survived. And an in-person workshop is an option again. Still, many organizations turned remote one way or another. Some organizations already were. Actually, our organization was already partially remote. But the change to the software industry after the pandemic, lockdown, and all the consequences are actually bigger I think bigger than we actually understood. I was actually talking about this just a couple of weeks ago. That's not the topic of my talk, but if you're curious, slides are available there. So, little summary. I think we are underestimating the consequences of remote work, and this is just like kind of ruining the software industry as a whole. Kind of sad. If you want to talk about it after this talk, I'm going to be available to ruin your evening. Let's talk about EventStorming. That's the topic of my talk. How many people here already been part of any workshop like this? Please raise your hand. Minority. Okay. So yeah, I need to tell you a little bit more what this is. The big picture format is something that involves everybody that would be part of it. Like the whole idea is just like invite the right people. It might be software people trying to learn a complex domain. It might be also business people trying to apparently explain the complexity of the domain to software people, but being UX or being a tester, a quality assurance, whoever has curiosity or whoever has answer might join. The more people you have, the harder the facilitation, of course. But if the knowledge inside the organization is fragmented, there is no reason to do it as a little private party. It's better to do it with all the truth holders in the same place. And the key things for having this workshop, the key ingredients are providing a limited modeling space. My trick is using a plotter paper roll that could be, maybe as big as that surface, like 15, 18 meters, to make sure there are no excuses. There is nothing preventing us from making what we're talking about visible. And the scope of this flow is actually not very limited, like an entire business line. You can also have more than one if you need to have more business line on a platform, but ideally, the conversation is about an entire business line from inception to delivery, all the different sides of a business. Big. And the common objection is, why shouldn't we focus on a specific area? And my answer is clearly no. And then I refine it a little, like sometimes you can, but you will miss a lot of potential. I will be more clear about this aspect later. But there is one point that I can make already, which is most of our workshops, meeting, exploratory session are bounded by the idea of not wasting the time and focusing on some specific part. The moment you decide not to focus, you see something that has been hidden for years. And I'm not saying that every single workshop or meeting shouldn't have a focus. I'm saying that one workshop, every 100, should be focused less, and then you might see something which are not visible because of your normal habit. The first part is you just explore with domain events on a timeline. This step is called chaotic exploration, and the name is just telling there is no specific order. Just like the hard part is which is not that hard, it's just having somebody start in. The moment you start, the moment the first person put the sticky notes on the wall and nobody is telling, oh, no, you're doing it wrong, well, another person might join in and suddenly have 1, 2, room 100 in a few minutes. Then, of course, it's messy. It's not good enough. It just said, put domain events on a timeline, and then you read them, and some of them are not exactly domain events. They are not a verb in the past tense, and maybe the timeline is just an attempt of a timeline is not correct. But you start in this way, and you get a few of them, then you improve it with a few more rounds. The reason why this starts to become interesting is because people are coming from different departments. This is simpler representation of the organization shape. You have silos, you have department with local knowledge, and their local knowledge might not be overlapping the knowledge of other departments. Then, of course, you have the IT department, which is trying to make them talk. The resulting knowledge distribution is something like this. You probably have seen this picture already if you're following EventStorming. This became kind of popular. But the thing about this knowledge distribution, I think, is a lot of people felt like they are in this situation because their company is special. And this is not. This is the average company. In every normal company, assuming that somebody has all the answer is an illusion. Just this messy distribution of knowledge is the norm. And okay, so let's try to put all the people that know a little, maybe the ones that think they don't know much and they know a lot, and also the people that think they know a lot and actually don't know much, in the same room. Try to see if all the different versions of the stories are working together, and try to build a more sophisticated version. A little note. A lot of people in the IT industry, I was actually grown like that. I remember, well, I guess it was 20 years ago, there was this recommendation of start collecting knowns about the domain. This might be the seed of your model. And this is actually bullshit. Nouns will lead you to a model that will probably will result too much coupled, maybe data-centric. Is probably wrong. And if you're using AI and LLMs to summarize this, well, they will be fooled by the language as well. There's a lot of sophistication about the language in the domain-driven design field where I come from, ubiquitous language, bounded context, and so on. But people will talk about things. People will talk about things thinking. They are talking about the same thing, and it's not. But if you follow nouns, you will fall into a trap. Now, after you seeded with the first set of events, you start raising the bar and ask people to, well, enforce a timeline. Make sure that every single event in the flow is following the ancestors and before the other consequences. And this is where people start to talk, because it starts with an initial brain dump, like, oh, this is what I know, this is what I do, and but now I need to put my events before or after other things which are happening in the organization. So maybe I need to have a conversation with the person which is holding the other sticky note, and well, suddenly I'm having a conversation with the right person. It starts becoming noisy. Sometimes it's just a matter of my event happens before yours. Sometimes you realize the conversation gets hotter, and you have to step in as a facilitator, saying like, well, that's an interesting problem. Let's put a hotspot, the magenta, purple, fuchsia color. You're just annotating the fact that there was something interesting going on. The overall flow, this is actually a picture of the exploration of conference organization workshop. And this is, roughly 12 meters, and capturing all the stuff from, deciding the theme of the conference, and then organizing, inviting the speakers, starting the call for paper, all of this stuff. This is more or less how it looks at the end of the exploration. During the exploration, while you see a lot of people moving and hovering around usually in the morning, the afternoon is a kind of a different, more step-by-step attitude. And this is the grammar. We have the events, which are the building blocks for business storytelling, verb in the past tense. The hotspots are highlighting the places where we had an interesting conversation, or maybe there's a problem in the area. And then you have the little yellow one, which are representing the people, the systems we are interacting with, like external tools, external organization, and a few other things. Boundaries, vertical or horizontal between main phases and swim lanes. And then at the end, we might also add ideas or opportunities to improve the system. And Then, in this scenario, we were going for problems and opportunities plus arrow voting. The way it ended was, okay, given all the problems that emerged during the exploration, what do you think is the most important? This one. Okay, let's focus on this one. The whole big picture flow is basically the combination of a standard recipe plus stopping. The recipe is we start with a chaotic exploration, so everybody can brain dump. We start enforcing the timeline. This triggers conversation. During the conversation, you might realize that two people have different ideas on the same problem, or think they are talking about the same thing, but it's not, or a few other things. And you can also observe the people in action a lot. And the moment you add people and system, like who is doing what, who is the actor for this specific activity, which are the external systems that we're talking to, we're providing more details for storytelling and also more opportunities for detecting failures. Like the initial narrative is going to be optimistic. The moment we start putting external systems, and the definition for an external system is whatever we can blame, then people start thinking about failure modes and start adding problems like, yeah, what if the external payment provider doesn't work? What if the network is down? What if the social media is just defamating us, and a few other things? Then the final step, which is usually taking 2-3 hours in the afternoon, is called explicit walkthrough. And we need a combination of a narrator, a scribe, and of the audience validating. And we basically try to tell the story in front of the audience. The audience will reject the story if it's not right. I mean, like, oh, Alberto, you forgot this. This happens before that. I wouldn't say that in this way. So there's a lot of correction, rearranging, and so on. But progressively, we sort out the entire flow. And we get to a point where, one, everybody's tired. Two, the model is representing what this company is doing. And that's actually a cool moment. Like everybody gets a coffee, this mess on the board, on the wall, it's us, and feels good. This moment, this clarity is actually a powerful weapon for us. And that's one of the main reasons why I say, like, let's not give up on the scope limitation so easily. The main thing is, in every organization, if we need to play with change and evolution and so on, there's an implicit blocker, which is people are afraid of breaking invisible things. Think about working in a bank. You have an idea for improving a system, but you don't know how many departments are going to be involved in this change, or how many people are going to be involved. It's very hard to understand the impact of your change in an organization which is very large. So the net result is you don't change it, because, well, maybe I'm going to break something, and this is a bank, so we're going to lose money. So look like a great idea, but I'm not taking this responsibility. In a smaller company, this might be a little bit less of a problem. In startups, people know a little bit more what you're doing end to end, or they are aware what you're doing. Maybe they don't know exactly what they're doing, and just running experiments. However, the solution here is let's make everything visible, and also add the confidence of saying, like, okay, this is everything. You probably need somebody with enough authority in the room to say, like, everything that we see here, yeah, that's a good representation of our business flow. But once you have it, once you're sitting on top of a big validated model of everything that happens in your company, then a few things can happen. So first, let's recap what happened in a big picture. It's designed for collaborative discovery. We are not resolving the issues, we are just marking them. Sometimes we might be lucky and discover you're calling two different things with the same name, but this is just a lucky shot. We can have this number of people from 12 to 50 with power-ups in facilitation. It might be a map of the current state or a plausible map of a future state, like for designing startups of new business line, totally working, just different emotional feelings during the activity. And the other thing that I like is decoupling the official outcomes from the secret ones. So the first one is massive learning. We might highlight bounded context. Keep in mind that bounded contexts are very important for the technical side and absolutely a mystery for the business. So don't use, well, we are going to explore bounded context as a tool to invite your business stakeholder. We can have better alignment between IT and business, and little surprise, IT cannot be aligned with the business if the business is not aligned with the business. And we can see that during the workshop, the different business departments have different ideas about how to run the business, and it's actually funny to see this and realize that, okay, there was no way to make you all happy at the same time. Unofficial outcomes, something that we don't advertise, but it might happen, is actually business learning the business. Don't ever use this as a way to sell the workshop, but the business doesn't have an end-to-end representation of everything they do. Chances are they're going to learn something when you provide it. They are not going to admit that usually, but you know you're doing something good. The other little part is not advertised, spotting the enemy. What do I mean with spotting the enemy? I mean that when doing enterprise software development, projects do not fail because of technology. They do fail because of politics. And a workshop like this is just bringing all your political opponents in the same room, giving you the chance to have a behavioral analysis on them. So you might look at the wall, at the sticky notes and the way they are moving around, but looking at the human beings in the room, the way they are signaling with the body language, the way they are grumpy in the corner, the way they are disappointed about the discussion going on, this is going to tell you a lot. And that's absolutely valuable. The other part which is really interesting for me is just once we build this validated narrative, every other layer on top of it becomes really, really cheap. It's just like, well, it was really hard to get to the top, now it's downhill, let's enjoy this. So on my side, what I see as the natural outcome of a big picture event storming is collecting problems and or opportunities, having people vote on what is the most important issue for you, and then we see the entire flow. We have a clear blocker, and well, let's solve it. It becomes so obvious. I mean, we observe the entire flow end to end. There is no reason not to solve the problem that every decision maker in this room basically voted to be the most important. So this is more or less the way I like to use EventStorming. Talking about other possible toppings, you normally have just 1 hour at the end of the validation phase, and so you might not have all of them, but alternatives are, one, we can explore value. We can see which are the steps creating or destroying value and looking for different currencies. We use little sticky notes, red and green. Red and green doesn't work in some countries in Asia, but a part of this working, that's a part of this warning, this is kind of good. We can do problems and opportunities. Another thing which is really interesting is looking at the emerging boundaries. It's just something we will see in a couple of slides, but we might detect signals about the natural shape of the model. And the other thing, especially if you're into team topologies, you might want to put the team responsibility on the areas they're focusing on. Very cheap. It takes 2 minutes to put a sticky note of a code that we haven't been used on the areas that your team is working on, and it might be a very interesting conversation after this. I remember with one company, oh, you're doing great, you're doing fine. That's actually very elegant architecture, and oh, is this how you are allocating the work? This team is a continuous bottleneck. Yes, okay, well, now let's do something about it. Talking about emergent context boundaries, it's an easy job if you have the people in the room. And a lot of people are saying like, well, it's a continuous refinement, extracting bounded context is an art. And I don't think so. I think it's actually pretty straightforward. The moment you explore, the moment you start separating phases, you have behavioral patterns on the human side, which are leading you to an easier display of what the natural bounded context might be. I'm going to give you one example here, which is you might have a boundary here and an event that has a few more duplicates, like sales opened or something like this. But many different people wrote an event that looked more or less the same, so it looked like a natural separator for a few things. And the pattern here is the expert on the left and the ignorant on the right. So you might have a person saying that an item needs to have an approved description and a high-quality image before being added to the catalog. I will tell you all the little details of what I'm doing because, yeah, I'm an expert in that field. This part is complicated. And then you have the ignorant on the right, which is saying like, well, just give me a valid URL and I start tweeting about it. They are talking about the same item or product or a good on sale. So apparently they are talking about a thing with the same data structure, but in practice, they need completely different models. And this is a good cutter between, well, a product definition bounded context and the marketing bounded context. But what I wanted to say, just like the signals are under your eyes. People are taking ownership of given areas of the board. People are hovering exactly by the sticky notes they care about. They move, but they are giving you extra semantic information about, you're going to remember something like, wow, remember this person that was always at the left of the exploration spectrum, or billing is always at the extreme right, as it claims. And you remember this little information, as you remember also the shape of the model and after the exploration, because the learning is a little bit more immersive. So now the question is, can we do it remotely? That was the question before the pandemic, and that is still the question after the pandemic is over. And well, the experiments we play and the workshop we ran during the pandemic gave us some interesting answers, like the dynamics that made the in-person workshop feasible were a combination of these, well, three main factors, like in-person, lo-fi, full day. The fact that we had a full day, and this day was relatively expensive, was actually giving some commitment to finish in the day, because we have a train to catch. And so the afternoon, the pace was accelerating so that we could finish by 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever is the country deadline. But also, we had many conversations possible at the same time. This was delivering early results in the morning. People were, okay, we discovered this in 30 minutes. I'm going to invest a couple of more hours of my time. I feel like the gambling is paying off. And yes, was actually really working. So in one day, usually that's a political time that we can have to run a big picture workshop, we make it work. But also, one of the little tricks that we use to make things work is called micro-laziness, is detecting all the little frictions and resolving them to make the workshop speed up. And this was basically completely missing in the online version. So we started playing with variation, like in-person is banned. Okay, let's go to Miro. What is a side effect? We had friction in execution because people are not as good in Miro as they are with markers. So, okay, no Miro fluency. Let's do a little exercise for warming up, but I need this 20 minutes. And then we're working on Zoom, and Zoom is draining people, so we need to do shorter chunks. And also we need to have a little bit more active facilitation because, while some business stakeholder are not good in Miro, we cannot expect them to actually be active, so we need to work for them. And a few more things. So the overall scenario is step by step, we could make it work, we could get to a decent agreement, but was clearly not the same thing. So overall, the scenario for remote is just like the commitment to finish was gone. The rhythm was lower, and many times we could deliver a limited value during the workshop session. And then we were trying to say, like, oh, let's do only half a day so that you're not going to be Zoom drained. But then people were taking meetings also in the afternoon, so they were drained anyway in the second session. And yes, let's say we made it plausible. It was a good trade-off during the pandemic, but not exactly the best solution nowadays. The second part is I knew how the workshop should taste, basically, and changing every little thing. Yes, we could still have comparable results, or maybe a faster digitalization of the problem, but is it the same thing? Well, no. It's just like how many ingredients can you change and still call it a carbonara? So when you say, well, remote big picture, well, we improve the facilitation techniques. If there is no other way we can deliver in 3 half-a-day sessions, but still we're missing a lot. And if there is a lot of politics involved, forget about it. There was a reason years ago where I used the toga party as a metaphor for an EventStorming workshop, and it was basically because would you like to join a toga party remotely? Would you like to stand in your room dressed like a Roman with a beer in your hand watching a computer screen? I don't think it's funny. So yeah, do yourself a favor, run the big picture in person. And if the question is, can we do it hybridly? Just think about the toga party again. Everybody's having fun in a place, and you are at home watching drunk people in a toga, and you're watching the computer screen. Not exactly my workshop. Let's move to a different format, process modeling. Here we are giving up the scope limitation. We're just focusing on some key process, maybe the most compelling process of an organization. We still have the expert, is the technical people to non-technical people conversation. A UX is even more important. You can play with this assumption eventually, but you need to know what you might be losing. It might be a key process, and it usually starts with a starting point, like that's the first command, and it's gonna end in some predetermined way, like a customer is gonna be enrolled, or the goods are gonna be delivered, and so on. And that is the format, but the thing is, all the facilitation style becomes different here. Like that's a different job. It's not anymore a discovery. In discovery, I just cared about having everything visualized and having a shared understanding. Here we are designing a solution together. We might need to converge on a solution, and it becomes hard. A source of inspiration for this was coming from this talk by Amy Edmondson. Actually, I saw the talk after finding myself a solution, but she was mentioning what happened when you have a team of experts newly formed. The actual story is a rescue mission for saving people trapped in a mine in Chile. Amazing talk. But she found out there were a couple of properties for making this expert collaborate on dealing with this type of situation. And the property were distributed leadership. There was not a single person in charge, but the situation, the problem at hand, was basically dictating who was going to be the leader for the next minutes. And the second thing was every single expert had to give up something of the precision of their language, of their tools, because they need to talk with other people that were as smart as they were, but experts in a different field. So that was the challenge. And clearly, this was an emergency situation, and I couldn't have an emergency situation to force people to collaborate. Solution for me was to get into the cooperative games approach. This is nothing new. Agile software development from Alistair Coburn was the inspiration more than 20 years ago. And the idea is, okay, we are a group of people. We are solving this problem together. In collaborative games, you're competing against the game, not against each other. But we need rules. So these are the rules for a modeling session. Every path should be completed. The color grammar should be respected. Every stakeholder should be reasonably happy. And every hotspot should be addressed. Let me see how it's going to look like. This is the way we are following the grammar, and we're going to end somewhere in a stable state at the end. Why is that? Okay, this is not what I expected. The color grammar is a little bit more sophisticated than what we have in the big picture, and basically says like an actor is going to be influenced by the real-world experience, like I am hungry, and information provided by the system in a read model. The result is going to be an action, which is going to happen on a system triggering an event. This might be visible in another read model, or might be triggering a reaction in a policy, and then the flow continues. And this is more or less how it's going to look like. Linearized version is actually this one. And why do I hammer on the grammar? Because it's my tool to force a conversation of the important thing. Like, do we always need a policy? That's actually one of the most common objections. Yes, rules of the game, we don't discuss this. Why is the policies are interesting? And okay, let me clarify a little bit more how a policy is going to appear in the model. Whenever an event happens, then we're going to react with a given command. Whenever a new user subscribes, we are going to send them a welcome message. The way we are modeling this is just like we just need the lilac between the orange and the blue. Why is this interesting? Because in most business situations, this is where the business is not telling the whole story. This is where you might have different versions because of different departments, or because of different needs, or because of evolution of the same organization across time. So the way to force the conversation into having the policy, you might have, great information about what is actually going on here, or contradiction from the business side. We had talking about the conference scenario, there is a policy for accepting talks and submission. And the question is, what are you actually looking at to accept or reject a proposal? And there might be interesting criteria which are different from conference to conference, and a lot of things to consider, or in a recruitment flow, or a few other things. Well, why is this interesting? Well, because we can also, as software designer, encapsulate the places where these decisions are going to change over time, making our systems more resilient. The policies are actually capturing all of this spectrum, like this whenever logic is, it might be in a small company saying something like the habits of the founder, like whenever somebody joins, I just welcome them. Or in a large corporation, we have explicit rules and legal obligation and a few other things. Implementation-wise, something might be responsibility of people, something might be responsibility for automation, and this pendulum usually swings. Now there's a third player, AI, that might be part of the thing. But this is where the things are changing over time. So you might be rerunning an exploration on the process and discover that, well, all the steps are the same, policies are becoming different. In general, what we do in event storming session is just we are shaping the conversation, not yet the code. We are making sure we are touching all the relevant topics. Talking about exploring value, this is another topic that pops up during the process modeling. We need to make sure that our stakeholders are reasonably happy. We need to make the value visible. We use emojis in the online version. We use a little red and green sticky notes in the in-person version, lo-fi. But the thing is, we might want to explore the different currencies, the different direction of value generated, and make this part of the conversation. UML was not designed to support the conversation, and it could give you precision, but precision is not the most important thing compared to openness and getting the richness of all the different nuances of the people involved, especially when the conversation becomes interdisciplinary. Sorry. One of the fresh addiction here is it turned out that process modeling worked pretty well together with in a product development field. If you're doing continuous discovery, if you are trying to detect which are the motivators of your users in a growth evolution process, process modeling and continuous discovery, they work really, really well. It's just like you can detect which are the drivers between for a given customer decision in your flow, and works pretty well. Also, it can support an interdisciplinary conversation. It's not like UML, which is technical stuff. It's not like design thinking, which is UX or service design stuff. It's something which is in the middle. It can be adapted to the needs of the people involved. Another thing that you can play very easily on top of this one is extracting user stories. Like the moment you highlight the value which is generated in a given step, sometimes it's just a matter of saying like, okay, we have this action, we have a few steps, this is generating some value, okay, this might be a good first definition of what a user story might be. So you don't need to run different workshops. You might use the same workshop to get multiple outcomes. Final thing, we became a little more aggressive on this area. Once the workshop is kind of completed, like we see all the paths get into a stabilized area, okay, now everything is starting to make sense. Okay, great, we are not done yet. We need some examples with names and numbers. So the good old format from behavior-driven development works pretty well. Please consider that you are at the end of an exploration. You have the expert in the room. They feel like, oh yes, we talked about everything. And then, okay, yes, now we have a customer called like this. Place an order for 200 euros on that day. Gets delivered on that day. How much is the VAT for this country? Okay. And sometimes it's obvious and boring. Other times, well, we need to ask. This is an interesting corner case. So use this time in this way. Final outcome that was getting interesting in the last year, we used the process modeling format as a building block for large-scale visualization tool. Like we got this idea from the Jim Benson book, The Collaboration Equation. He's actually getting the idea from Lynn, the Obeya room. But we started making things in the digital format. So some part of these are some flows which are coming from different areas as a process modeling. We actually hybridated with data coming from a screenshot from the sales funnel of the website, and then we had all the part later on. The whole idea was to have something that was a central decision-making point for business and technical people, especially if you're working on a growth strategy. Can you do it remotely? Well, this one, a lot better than big picture. We are losing something, but not that much. We're still losing the politics. We are still losing all the side conversation. We are losing the possibility of having a conversation by the coffee machine with one weird stakeholder. But, well, it's a board game, so playing Risk with your friends face-to-face is still better, but you can play board games digitally as well. So, yeah, we're missing something, but it's, let's say, comparable. Talking about the final model, software, what about the aggregates, the original idea? Well, I will still stick to the board game assumption, and let's consider this just an expansion set. We add a couple of couple of new rules. So aggregates should be coherent. We improved the grammar. We started adding also the yellow one, the aggregate. That's a building block for the software that we are building, and we are still thinking about the color puzzle thinking with the policy and so on. So that was the original stuff in the original article. Please don't look at it, already mentioned. But in terms of how it's going to look like, well, that's one table scenario. We still have the events. We have the hotspot to visualize the open issues. We have the policies for reactive logic, external systems, people doing things. A read model, the data needed to take a given decision, which is actually pretty powerful, meaning that you are defining data by the needs of the user and not by the capability of your system. So you're not deciding how you're providing this data, you're just stating that this data is necessary for a given decision. So you're opening up the possibility of different implementation. Plus, aggregate, something that you're going to discover, like independent state machine. I need to tell something more about aggregates. Ideally, we start by putting something yellow between commands and events. This is going to happen on some component of the system. Then the more you see the behavior, the more you realize, oh, this is probably the same thing that we have here, because we place a reservation here, we are canceling a reservation there. So maybe there's a symmetry in the action. So two sides of the same story. Naming will fool you a lot. So my suggestion is to start with placeholder names, or don't fall in love with names. Names will fool you, and most of the time, don't fall in love with your intuition. Your original idea is the one which is most likely to be wrong. On a timeline, you might start seeing interesting symmetries, like you're probably going to have the same policy before and after the external system, maybe a wrapper for some external service, and maybe something like probably the same aggregate at the beginning and at the end. Maybe this is a purchase process, maybe a registration process, something that you begin, something that you finish. There is some recurring symmetry at the end. During the discussion, we are open to talk with a business stakeholder, but I take very seriously everything they are telling me on the left side, but when they are telling me something like, you need to name this stuff this way, well, no, that's my job. That's my implementation, and then so it's different stories. This is the part they see. They see the commands, the action. They see the read model, the data they need to take decision. They see the wireframes, the layout of the pages they want to see, but not what is behind the curtain. And in general, as Amy Edmondson was suggesting, we cannot be completely precise. We cannot be, oh, let's go sequence diagram instead. This is how we're gonna lose the business part of the team. So we need to give up something as individuals in order to succeed as a team. Let's look at a single tool won't be enough to solve everything. That was referring to the idea of we could see it better if we could aggregate all the, if we could put together all the comments to the same aggregator, but this would kill the timeline visualization. That would make life harder for the business stakeholder. Everybody will probably give up something in order to keep the conversation engaging, and so on. Talking about the happy stakeholders, or reasonably happy stakeholders, because we might still have failure patterns, this is more or less how we can visualize it. The thing which is interesting here is the moment we talk about value, the obvious reasoning goes to money, or maybe time. We are wasting users' time. We want to provide speed, but also speed is money, and so on. But the currencies might be different. There might be safety, it might be stress, it might be something emotional, and so on. The moment we're opening that type of conversation, we might get interesting results, because maybe we just never asked before. And we might discover that a flow could be optimized for time, but maybe it could be optimized for, well, happiness, or relax, or whatever is the most important currency in your system, which doesn't have to be obvious. Talking about value, yes, money is the obvious one, but it's a zero-sum currency, meaning that, well, if I pay you, you're getting money and I'm losing it. That becomes kind of boring. Time, stress, and anxiety is something that it might be reduced on both sides. If we can improve the feelings of our users, they are not calling us back with anger on the claim office. Other currencies were even more interesting: joy, reputation, and satisfaction. There's a great book from Niklas Modig, which is called This is Lean, and he basically said you cannot optimize for more than one thing. And I remember in the early days of starting the company, I thought like, oh, as an entrepreneur, I should be optimizing for revenues. And that was kind of dumb. The thing that we'd done after discovering the reason why people were collaborating with us, we discovered that most of them were not doing it for the money, they were doing it for the joy of engaging with smart people. Okay, let's work on this. And that was giving us one of the best years ever. So we started optimizing for happiness, and well, at the end of the year, we doubled revenues. That was not our goal, but it worked, and everybody was also happy in the process. This is another very interesting facilitation tool, because it's not obvious, but it's powerful. So hotspots are addressed. That's going to be your best friend, but not now. So when you start dealing with the project, most of your colleagues are going to be helping you, telling you, oh, Alberto, remember also this. Well, a customer can also buy more than one good. Oh, the good can also be returned, which is not exact. It's just like having 20 versions of my mother while trying to cook something. It's not exactly nice. Let me finish one thing. And this is, the hotspot is helping you a lot with this. Like, can you please write down which are the shortcomings of the current thing? I can model a little improvement at a time. I cannot model 20 improvements at the same time. This is not working. In terms of the modeling team, I mean, you can do it alone if you want. This might be improving your fluency with the grammar and the thinking, but the best sessions are coming when you have 3 different perspectives, which are pretty close to the product triad, if you want. We need to see somebody from the business side. We need to have somebody from software design and architecture, and we also need opinions from user experience and service design. That's a perfect mix that I would like. But the thing which is really interesting is what happens in terms of attitude. Like, I prefer calling them, these 3 people, the driller, which might be somebody giving you a lot of what if. What if the customer has an evil twin? What if a server a meteor smashes our servers in the middle of the transaction? Half of these are good ideas. Half of these are probably bullshit, not happening in any scenario. And We need to counterbalance this approach with the pragmatic. The pragmatic might be the person able to say, like, well, that's a good idea, but 90% of the time, we have one customer buying only one good, and that's all we need for the MVP. OK, good. I have no idea which one of these people is right. I would like the person, the pragmatic, providing numbers, if possible, but also there are situations where, well, the risk is not evenly distributed. Somebody might say, like, oh, don't worry about this security vulnerability. It's never going to happen. But if it happens, you're going to go in jail, not me. So that's a different scenario. The third person I would like to be in the team is the empathic, the person caring about emotions and feeling. Like usually these two people are talking about, well, business number or technical capabilities. Somebody needs to take care of the emotion. They don't have to be people. They have to be the right attitude. If we have this type of conversation going on, well, that's a good workshop. The other thing which is interesting that has been growing a lot in the last year was about the strategies to play this game. It's just not like, OK, this is the grammar, find your way. It's a board game, and the first time you play it is boring because you check out the rules like the first game of Monopoly, but then you start developing your own tactics and gets better. So in terms of openings, just like in chess, you might start from the beginning, tell the story from the first action, and see where it goes. It's more natural, but would more easily get you swamped because you get into more and more alternatives, and you started with a simple path, and now I have so many alternatives, so you need discipline for this. You can start from the end. So I want to have this item delivered by the customer. Which are the steps which are making it possible? This is good. It's going to give you a linear exploration, but maybe you might miss some interesting opportunities along the way. Another possibility is to start exploring with events and then connecting them needs strict time boxing because you might end up redoing the big picture workshop in a few minutes, and then you will have a big mess of events to be connected. But if you just explore for 3-4 minutes, OK, we have some foundation. It's visible. Now let's rearrange the stuff with the grammar to make it visible. So honestly, I actually use all of them, depending on the scenario, sometimes even in the same workshop. So don't fall in love with only one possibility. The hardest part for design workshop has actually to do with team agreements. The following picture is taken from a software architectural discussion, and this is where the personalities of the people are more involved. So you have a lot of smart people trying to solve a complex problem, but actually the most important part is many of them have never been trained in sharing half-baked ideas. So many people might have been learning to, OK, this is my design. I'm going to show it to you when it's ready. And it's not ready yet. We're just working on something which is totally not ready. So the way to make it work, the most interesting is probably the first one, temporary leadership. Have a rigid time boxing of let's try to do this thing in this way for the next 3-4 minutes. So something like, can you please be quiet for the next 4 minutes? Just like you have great ideas, but I need a quiet mode. And then after 3 minutes, somebody else is going to take over. Or can somebody help me with describing? I can tell what to do, but I'm not really familiar with the color. So that might be the possibility, narrator and scribe. Another possibility, which is, well, I'm totally OK with the feedback. Can you please just write it? Not continuously interrupt my train of thoughts. The fun thing after a very bumpy start for this, because, well, how can I do something in only 3 minutes? Well, you actually start doing it, and then progressively the time needed becomes shorter and shorter. Can you do it remotely? Yes, that's even better. than the ratio of signal loss. It's even better than the process modeling one. Still, the kickoff works a lot better when we are in person, because there's a game part which works quite okay there. Got to wrap up, and the time is running out. So I still use this metaphor of the pizza because actually the thing that happened during the last year was providing was giving a lot of different recipes and variation and flexibility, and there's a standard recipe that became a little bit more robust. There's a variation on the recipe that happens online with some losses along the way, but the customization, the ability to be customized was very, very well. The other thing that I really like, and it's still a hold on, is we are having the same language in 3 formats. We're looking at the whole thing. We are looking at the process. We are looking at a feature or a sophisticated process, but we are still having the same type of language and providing a little bit more of consistency. When it comes to the decision in person of remote, big picture, don't even think about doing it remotely unless you are a natively remote organization with developers in South America, Australia, and getting together is not a possibility, or use gatherings. Otherwise, I still don't find a valuable scenario for this. For the other 2 formats, process modeling and software design, if you are co-located, just enjoy the pleasure of doing it in person. If you are negotiatably remote, start the kickoff in person, then migrate, and then be ready to keep it going. That's all I wanted to say for this one. So thank you for your patience. I'm gonna be here also tomorrow. There's also talk about extreme event design. But I'm gonna be around for any other question. And thank you for your patience again. Thank you.